Thank you very much for this opportunity to present to the World BioProtection Forum today. I appreciate the invitation from the organizers and regret that I cannot be there with you in person. Today, I'd like to talk about embracing complexity, phytobiomes, and a new vision for agriculture. But before I start into that, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Phytobiomes Alliance sponsors, for making it possible to do our work and for calling for a new vision in agriculture. We are an international alliance, and we are a non-profit, pre-competitive research consortium comprised of scientists from industry, academia, and government. So far, we're in 8 countries, but we're always expanding and always looking for new collaborations. So we hope that we will soon cover much more of the globe. And our focus is coordinating a paradigm shift in agricultural research and ultimately in agricultural production. So when we began thinking about what's the challenge in agriculture and trying to feed the world and meet the demands of the population by 2050, we really looked at, what is the traditional science approach for agricultural research and to see if there are ways in which we can improve that. And as you know, the traditional scientific approach is linear. We focus things in, we assume they're not complex. We look at it at a reductionist standpoint, and we also focus on individual components. We have soil scientists who only focus on the soil components. We have plant geneticists who only focus on creating better plants without regard to the context in which they will be grown. We also have scientists who focus on microbes and microbiomes without regard to the other aspects. And we have scientists who focus on weather or climate or any of the other geophysical components that affect agriculture. But the reality is that agriculture is a complex system. It is nonlinear. It is controlled by multiple interactions and variables. It adapts via learning or evolution. And the great thing about a complex system is that we can influence it as a system. But the only way we can do that is to have a paradigm shift to focusing on a complex systems approach. So when we were looking at, again, what can we do to achieve this complex systems approach? Well, we thought we would start with plants. And so really looking at phytobiomes, which is a complex systems of plant-based agriculture. It is a biome. So in this picture, you've got soil as the biome, and you have a plant in that biome, in this case, my favorite plant, wheat, and trying to understand that particular biome. But we can't do it unless we bring in all the other geophysical and biological components, from climate to other animals, other plants, as well as the microbiome, and of course, the soil in which it is actually being produced in this particular biome. But even then, we're only seeing part of the picture. We have to look at management practices. It's every aspect of this phytobiome is influenced by management practices, whether it's about irrigation or whether it's nutrients applied or even which kind of plant to put in that particular biome. Other phytobiomes would be pasture, vegetable gardens, forest, grasslands. And of course, I showed you a wheat field, but a phytobiome of wheat in the first picture. But phytobiomes also include greenhouse farming, vertical farming, container farming, and all other controlled environment phytobiomes. Remember, a biome is simply a space or a particular place, and we want to put a plant in that specific space and try to maximize its productivity and sustainability. So our vision is by 2050 that all farmers will have the ability to use predictive and prescriptive analytics based on geophysical and biological conditions for determining the best combination of crops, management practices, and inputs for a specific field, i.e. a biome, in a given year. In addition, when we think about our vision, we really focus on a number of different aspects for this. And first and foremost is, what can we do and what does that vision look like for optimal sustainability and productivity? Using adaptive, data-driven on-farm systems, so really coupling the biological with the geophysical. Using rapid site-specific diagnostic tools that give us in situ, on time, real-time information that growers can use. Then using prescriptive crop management techniques where we can give the grower the information they need to know how to maximize the sustainability and productivity, to develop resilient crops, as well as to optimize their soil health, both for short-term as well for short-term productivity, but as well as long-term sustainability, and even things like how could they optimize carbon sequestration or deep carbon sequestration. So when we look at the entire phytobiomes, and when we began on this mission a number of years ago, we thought, taking this entire complex system, what are the gaps? And, we really were looking at the different areas of the interactions, how plants interact with the microbiomes, the climate, soil interacts with the plants, etc. But what we really found where the gaps were and where there was not a whole lot of research yet at that time was in the area of microbiomes and how those microbiomes interact with each of these different components to really not only have influence on the system, but actually can in some cases be detrimental, as well as can be have positive benefits on the system. And so we looked at where to focus some of our efforts in that regard. And we knew that if we focused on these biological aspects of the microbiome and how they interact with the different components, that we could then build that into the management practices that growers would use. And so we established a number of research priorities, first and foremost being microbiome knowledge generation, standards and protocols, because we need standards to be able to use that information and to gather the information on a global scale or even on a local scale before we can actually use it. So we have to have some way of comparing apples to apples. And so we need standards and protocols for all kinds of microbiome knowledge generation that can then fit into the larger scale precision agriculture. We also began looking at the regulatory framework because the opportunities for microbes and the use of microbial products is really great. And we could really improve the sustainability by increasing our use of microbial products. So we were looking at what kind of research needs to be done to improve the regulatory framework for the commercialization of microbial-based products. So that has been a major effort, and we're trying to work with regulatory agencies around the world in identifying the gaps and opportunities they see from a regulatory science perspective. And through all of this, we're trying to generate knowledge and learn how to better manage it and to try to have the opportunity for linkages between different, from data collected under different projects or in different countries, and also really looking at what we could potentially do to combine and really extrapolate information from even privately held data. We are also highly focused on multidisciplinary capacity building and multidisciplinary projects, with a goal eventually of getting to transdisciplinary efforts. And one of the ways we do this is the projects that we support and that we may actually propose or that we lend our name to are all projects that cover more than one component of the entire phytobiome. We will not support necessarily a just straight microbiome project or a straight plant genetics project. We're looking for projects that will really start teasing out the differences between the different components of the phytobiome. So we're looking for multidisciplinary projects, and also to try to encourage and assist in training scientists who look at things from a multidisciplinary perspective. And our longer term vision is, of course, to get to transdisciplinarity, which really means that you look at a problem and you bring a lot of different scientists together and you treat it as a whole. And that's a long-term future, and we can possibly get there once we fully embrace the idea of looking at science and agriculture as a complex system. And then finally, with all of the information that we're trying to gather and including the multidisciplinary activities, at some point we have to take this data and incorporate it into precision and digital agriculture, or it won't be of any use to the growers. So we are also starting to try to make linkages with precision agricultural companies and those who are leading the field in that regard. And to really start thinking about how we incorporate biological information and in what we're focused on right now, microbiome knowledge into precision agriculture. So we have a number of major efforts that are underway right now. We have projects that link components within the entire phytobiomes network. We're trying to develop, from a regulatory standpoint, a sequence-based classification system for microbes, and we are working with regulatory agencies to do that. We are also involved in the microbiome standards, an international microbiome and multi-omic standards alliance. This is an alliance that's focused mostly on biomedical and the human microbiome, but we want to learn from them, take what we can from the way they're doing things, and then build it out to something that's relevant to agriculture. And we also want to remind them that as they make their standards and as they move forward in perhaps requiring for research funding that people abide by these standards, that they take into consideration that a field is not a human gut microbiome, that it's very different. Then, as I mentioned, we are really trying to see what we can do to facilitate regulatory compliance, and this includes holding workshops, whether it's genetically engineered microbes, looking at microbes, the regulations impacting microbial products generally. We're really trying to do what we can to facilitate that. We are also have just launched, with support from the U.S. National Science Foundation, the coordination of microbial collections and networks, both public and private collections. And this is with the idea that we want to make sure that we have in the future access to the microbes that have been collected over decades, and that they are not lost, and that they can continue to be of use, whether it's for discovering new biological products or whether it's getting a better understanding of the microbes that are in particular areas. And finally, an area that I'm really excited about is that we're really beginning to look at the One Health focus and to try to establish linkages between the phytobiome and what is happening with human and animal health and nutrition. So, you know, what can we do within the phytobiome that would improve the gut microbiome, for example, of cattle? And can we do something with plants or with biological products that would actually decrease methane production, for example, and that would have a positive impact on the environment? So I'm excited about that effort, and in fact, I'm really pleased with some of the work that we're trying to do in the UK specifically. So we also have a number of working groups. We have a controlled environment agriculture working group, regulatory, microbiomes, that's really focused on plant and soil microbiomes, and then our livestock and poultry microbiome. So why now? People have often asked me, why in the world are we trying to do something so complex now? Well, we've had a lot of technological advances in the recent years, you know, in the past 5 or 6 years. We're getting, because of genome-enabled technologies, we're beginning to be able to probe and understand the biological components in the agricultural systems. We also have seen tremendous advancements in precision crop management systems in the past 5 to 10 years, you know, moving from variable rate technology all the way down to having soil and plant sensors, to having robots throughout a field. The other thing that is really exciting is what's been going on in computational science from the standpoint of machine learning and artificial intelligence practices, deep learning, and one of the more exciting areas is what is happening now in quantum computing, that we may actually begin to see quantum computers in the near future, which will totally expand our ability to deal with really complex and very large data sets. And finally, system science. We have a lot of tools available now for network analysis. And that's really critical, because if we're going to understand a complex system, we have to have that analysis of the entire networks. And so that's why we are approaching it now and believe that now is the time to really change and move to a new vision and change our paradigm to phytobiomes-based agricultural research and production. And I'd like to also mention that this aspect of it is a convergence of both need and opportunity. We hope that you will join us in September this year for our 4th Phytobiomes International Conference. Registration and abstract is open now, and we really would like to see a wide range of interest and wide range of individuals from different disciplines there. And so we hope that you will join us. I want to thank you again for your time and your participation in this particular conference, which I think is really helping to set the stage for advancements in the use of microbial and biological products for the future. Thank you.